Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts for Brock Greenhalgh. My name's Mark Payne on 570 News Radio. I have the privilege of filling in today because I've been anxious to meet and speak with this individual, Faisal Susiwala, well-known real estate agent, particularly within the RE/MAX network, but also throughout the country, if not further, by reputation. Faisal has been ranked as the #1 individual RE/MAX agent worldwide and has achieved significant lifetime sales. He's involved in the community. He's also had time to write a book. The fact you have time to do this is beyond me. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. Pleasure meeting you.
Well, and I must say, just reading a bit about your background from someone who in your late teens first got into this, it's been a lot of years, and I can only imagine the things you've learned over the years.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. 38 years this year, and I've loved most of it, I shall say. It's been it hasn't been a straightforward journey. Lots of ups and lots of downs, but lots of learning, and I'm very passionate about what I do, and it's quite the world out there for us, especially right now.
Well, Faisal, I feel like you're the one guy at a dinner party when people know who you are and what you do. Everybody's got a question because right now everything feels up in the air when it comes to real estate. So I wonder if I could start by just kind of giving you give us the lay of the land right now. Who's buying, who's selling, who's losing, which is the big fear, and what the data maybe reveals.
It's been quite a ride over the last 5 years, right? From 2020 to now, we've seen like numbers and increases in values that we didn't see 20 years prior to that, and it all happened in a very condensed time frame of 3 years, really. And then we saw the decline. Now we're still up over the lows of 2018, 2019. We're still above that, but we're not seeing the peaks that we saw in 2022. And there's a divide. You've got those that are in a position to buy right now, and then you've got those that are just really struggling to even hold on to their homes. So we see this great contrast. The condos were a big seller throughout that pandemic season, right to about now, where the closings are coming in. And the issue that we're seeing now is that this abundance of inventory of units that were purchased are going to hit the market either for occupancy, for rent, or for assignment, because those homeowners or those buyers are no longer in a position to close those deals. And that can be a real challenge. And when they're going to get their financing, those units that they paid for, let's say they paid $1,100 a square foot, are appraising out at $800 per square foot. So there's a massive drop in valuation right now. So there's a little bit of an issue, and we're going to see that more so in the GTA than in our region, but it does have an impact on the overall market.
I was going to ask you that because you point out the GTA versus our area, and we are so close. So it's easy to assume what happens there happens here, but yet different things will happen in this market. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. We're not that condo heavy here, and the many of the condo projects in our region have halted or have been postponed as a result of not enough traction in the market. We may be the beneficiary of challenges in the GTA because we are affordable. We attract multi-generational buyers. We are in a hub where it caters to the tech, it caters to those who are in transportation, it caters to those families who have kids who are going to post-secondary education, universities, colleges, because they can be in Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph region and still have access to so many different universities and colleges within driving distance, which will save the parents a ton of money. I've got two kids in university in London, and I know how expensive it can be to pay for accommodation in addition to tuition and other fees that are involved. So we are attracting that audience as well. So, despite what's going on in the overall market, I'm still extremely confident and optimistic about our region.
I mean, that's the big concern for people that they don't want to end up losing by making a bad decision. So a lot of people are saying, do I wait? Do I wait for clarity?
The bad decision is being reactive and acting when you don't need to. So it's like, you look at the stock market and you hear people say, oh, I'm down 15% today. Well, you're only down if you sell, right? And you're only up if you sell. But if you don't do anything, it's neutral. And if you're in a position to hold on, then do that. Don't suffer a loss just for the sake of the market being down right now, and stay away from that herd mentality aspect. Well, everybody else is getting out, so I'm going to jump out. Everybody else is buying, so I'm going to buy. There's greater opportunity in these times when you can make thoughtful decisions. Of course, if you're in a situation of financial distress, then it's best to stop the bleeding and take action to get out, or at least consult with somebody that can help you. But or if you are upsizing, there's still the average price point of a home in our region, say around that $800,000, is still selling very well. So if you're thinking about upsizing, this is a great time to upsize, because the homes that are a million, million two, million five, they're not selling as well. And those prices haven't started recovering yet. So it's actually a great time to upsize. Downsize, not so much, unless you're downsizing out of the region into maybe a different province or going into a retirement facility. Then we have to look at, again, is this the right time for you to make that move? Or but I do expect the market to stay fairly flat for the next 12 to 18 months. I certainly don't expect the market to decline, but I don't expect any, knocking it out of the park at 10% increase in the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay, now for people that maybe are already got the wheels going on selling, let's talk about some of those things that turn buyers off.
Yeah, so I always say if it's got two legs or four, get it out of the house. So that means don't stay home for showing, and take your pets with you. And just basically the basic stuff, like, don't smoke in your house if you're trying to sell it, because that's a big no-no. People will punish you dearly for having a stinky, smoky house. Just declutter it, make it comfortable. So no loud music. If you've got a teenager living there, air out the kid's room, like just make sure the house smells good, it's approachable, lights are all on, get dirty dishes put away, put all your knickknacks away. I'm not one to say to people, put your personal photographs away, but if you've got your entire family album on the wall, maybe take a few of those down. Look, if you're going to be moving anyways, then you need to pack. So you might as well get the visual benefit of packing in advance of selling your home than waiting until it sells and then say, well, yeah, all this stuff will be gone. So just decluttering, giving it a fresh coat of paint, making it, just visually appealing is really the key, and make it very comfortable and easy to access. So if you're putting your home on the market, don't say, well, I can't show it before noon, and I can't show it after 6, and I can't show it on this day on the weekend. Like, you have to be willing to go through that pain. And if you price it right, that pain will not last very long, because it will sell. We're still getting multiple offers in the market.
Okay, now what about there's a couple things you hear about, bake an apple pie, it'll smell nice. Or if you do have stuff, store it in the garage because that won't matter. Do you subscribe to that?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Load up the garage to the rafters. It doesn't matter, because it's a garage. And, most, one partner might look in the garage and say, oh yeah, that's great. Lots of place for my junk, or it's a good workshop, or I could park my car in here. But they're not really spending a lot of time. So get it out of the house into the garage. If you've got large spaces, even in the basement, that are unfinished, don't clutter those spaces up saying, I'll put everything in the basement. Two reasons. One, you're lugging it all down to your basement, and you got to take it all back out. And number two, more and more people are looking at multi-generational living now. So they need to be able to look at a space that's unfinished and say, okay, where can I put the bathroom? Where's the roughing? Where is the kitchen going to go? Where can I cut a door open? Where can I put a window? So these things need to be opened. It's not like the old days where we could just stuff the basement with things and nobody really worried about the basement. Now the basement is a major living space or an income property option for buyers.
And they want to visualize the potential, I guess is what you're saying.
Absolutely. The potential is so important. And to a certain extent, we can do a lot through virtual staging. We do a lot of this virtual staging to help people understand what a space could look like. Or what if we really don't like the furnishings in a room, we can swap it out digitally and create a virtual staging so that because the whole idea of staging, and stagers hate this when I say this, the whole idea of staging or the primary reason to stage is to make the pictures look really good so that when the buyer sees the ads or the Instagram video or the MLS listing, it appeals to them right there. Now, when they come into the home, what they need to see is the space. And then they can sort of see how they could work. But to get them in the door, let's make the pictures look really good. And that's where we use virtual staging quite a bit.
You're talking to Faisal Susiwala. He's a well-known real estate agent, award-winning, and an author. The writer of the book, The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, as you have sold billions. So I congratulate you on that. And we'll
Thank you.
have more for you here on Ask the Experts in just a moment. And we're back on 570 News Radio. It's Mark Payne for Brock Greenhalgh today. Ask the Experts, and what a great opportunity today to speak with Faisal Susiwala, well-known real estate agent in the RE/MAX network, ranked as the #1 RE/MAX agent worldwide and achieved significant lifetime sales. By the way, you can back that up. It's not like saying world's best coffee. Everyone says that. No, you legitimately have, and you've written a really interesting book that kind of walks us through your life. So I find that fascinating. You could get the book. You can contact Faisal online, homeshack.com, or call 519-624-5555. Let's get on to a topic that I certainly believe in. If only in a younger day I had learned more when it had to do with financing or real estate in school.
Yeah, and that's been a very close thing to my heart. I started in the business when I was 18 years old, still in high school, and I was forced to learn at an early age about, my financial literacy came through practical sources of being basically in the trenches, learning as I went along. And I remember thinking back then, it would have been so nice to understand a lot of this stuff, like through the education system. And for years, and even in my book, I talk about it, that I wish there were financial literacy courses that were mandatory in high schools. And I wrote that book in 2020. And I was very, very pleased to see that Ontario high schools are introducing a mandatory personal finance component starting this year. So it's
Excellent.
finally
Yep.
happening. And the initiative integrates financial literacy into the grade 10 math curriculum, which is awesome. And it requires the students to pass with a minimum grade of 70% to graduate. So now this has become mandatory, and it's a long time coming and certainly very welcome to see, because our young people today are not getting that education. And we're going to have an entire generation of people who will not know how to manage their finances. And it could go into a tailspin. And we'll talk about what baby boomers are doing to help their kids or not help their kids as a result of even that generation of the 30 and 40-year-olds not being able to manage their money properly. But if students learn about money early, they're able to invest sooner. They avoid bad debt. They learn how to build wealth, not just income. So these are all important aspects of financial literacy. It's not just about balancing the books every month. It's okay, how do I create wealth? How do I become a contributing member to society and not take from society? And that's kind of the aspect behind it.
Yeah, I feel like, and I can only speak for myself, it was something that mom or dad, or, I just kind of followed my dad's lead. He was good with money, but then kind of to your point, his generation may have treated in money a little differently. And so to have it at least standardized in a school format, I can only imagine would be a good thing.
Yeah, and today, I work with a lot of young buyers. And, so 38 years ago when I started in the business, someone would ask, how much is this house? I've got X amount of dollars to put down. I can afford a home for $140,000 back in the day. Okay. And I've got $40,000 to put down. Today, the buyer mentality is I can afford to pay $2,950 per month, plus property taxes and insurance and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a payment mentality, not a purchase mentality. And that's why we see the impact of interest rates today. In the early 80s, interest rates were at 21%, and people were still buying and selling and still building wealth and whatnot, because that population was, we save up, we have the cash, we buy. Now, in fairness, you would spend a lifetime trying to save up to buy an average home before you had $800,000. And by that time you saved that up, that house is probably going to be $1.5 million. So you cannot compare to that. But what you can say is, okay, am I making the right decisions in life to be able to service the debt that I'm about to take on? And am I being thoughtful in my purchase here, or am I buying on a whim, not understanding that, yeah, at 1.8% interest, I'm going to overpay by $300,000 because the market has gone crazy and everybody's in a bidding war. Or should I buy at 4% interest when the market is calm, which it is right now?
Mm.
I'm going to save $400,000 on that same home. And if I do the right things and don't spend my money on foolish things and not want that instant gratification, maybe when the interest rates drop to 2% or 2.5%, I'll be the beneficiary of that appreciation, even though I've paid $10,000 or $15,000 more in interest over the next 2 to 3 years. I now have three or $400,000 equity as a result of making a decision to purchase in a down market where opportunities existed, and I wasn't competing to buy every house like we did back in 2022.
Interesting, because you're absolutely right. I think that at best, a lot of people just have a general interest. They don't take into account a lot of the factors that you're talking about right now.
Exactly.
Now, something else you've mentioned, you were talking about boomers, quiet revolution happening. What's the quiet revolution?
So, and this shifts almost as much as Mr. Trump's opinions every morning. It's like their baby boomers we're going to start distributing our wealth now while we are alive to our kids, help them buy a home, give them some money. Maybe they'll build us a basement apartment that we can live in the summer season, and then we'll go away in the winter season. But what we started seeing was mismanagement of the money that was being transferred over to their kids, where they were not, again, and maybe it comes back to financial literacy, where they just didn't know how to handle getting a paid off home, their car's paid for, and now all of a sudden they've kind of blown their inheritance, and mom and dad have watched them blow through all that money in a fairly short period of time. And a good example is in 2022. A house would be for sale for $999, and you'd see 35-year-olds offering 1.3 and 1.4 million for the same home. So it would overpay by $300,000 or $400,000. Where do we think that money came from? It came from their parents.
Mhm.
So that money now has already been dispersed. The baby boomers now are looking back and saying, uh-oh, we did all of this. We have a problem. We've still got 25 years to live. How are we going to pay for our retirement? How are we going to pay for our health care? How are we going to pay for any support that we need throughout? And is my money going to outlive my life or not? And in many cases, unfortunately, the answer is no, it's not. So I'm certainly not saying don't share your wealth with your kids, but I'm saying really have a plan on how much you need first to get to your retirement, and we're living longer now, and you have to be prepared to service your cost of living throughout retirement and throughout your old age. Otherwise, the challenge is not that your kids won't help you. The challenge is your kids may not have the funds to help you get into a nice facility during your retirement.
Or as you said, the knowledge and the ability to use the funds correctly now that you're giving them without your help. Yeah, very
Exactly.
good information. Faisal Susiwala is our guest right now on 570 News Radio, a award-winning real estate agent. I'm giving you an award. Achieving amazing lifetime sales, ranked as the number one individual REMAX agent worldwide. You can contact him at homeshack.com, 519-624-5555. But don't contact him right now because I need him. He's back with more information in just a moment here on 570 News Radio. And welcome back to Ask the Experts. My name's Mark Payne, and for Brock Greenhalgh today, my guest is Faisal Susiwala, well-known real estate agent, ranked as number one individual REMAX agent worldwide, achieving significant lifetime sales. A gentleman that believes in helping with community initiatives, and also the author of The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, a book you can purchase at homeshack.com. Nice to have you back, sir. Let's talk about the fear. So much of today is about fear, and it shouldn't be. But will Canada have a market crash, the housing market this year?
And that's a huge question. I get asked that multiple times a day, really, and it's unlikely. And I'll tell you why. Despite the high rates and economic noise, the the crash, in my opinion, is not coming because we still have a shortage of 3.5 million homes, and that kind of supply gap, it doesn't allow prices to fall fast. And if we had an abundance of inventory or new housing starts, which we're not seeing housing starts anymore. Builders have basically shelved their projects. We're not going to see a crash. Now, we're not going to see 10, 15, 20% growth annually right now, but 1 to 5% is still a reasonable growth that I expect to see within the next 12 months. We know that we've had 7 consecutive rate cuts. Of course, we didn't have one in the last Bank of Canada announcement. June 6th is our next announcement that's coming up. And by the summer or fall, we'll see at least 1 or 2 more rate cuts. And if we look back to the earlier days, pandemic days especially, every time there was a rate cut, prices went up. That has been sort of overshadowed by tariff talks, unemployment issues, uncertainties around us, and people will just pause when there's uncertainty. But when I think the dust settles, and we know now with this week's announcement on tariff talks becoming a little bit more friendly, we're starting to see, the stock market is doing much better. We're starting to see a little bit of gain happening in different aspects of the economy. So I don't expect a crash. And, people have been saying it for a long, long time. Look, it's not going to be a free ride, but it's not going to be a collapse. And if you're waiting for a massive drop, I honestly think you're going to be waiting forever for that because people have been saying that my entire career. Market is going to crash. There's going to be peaks and valleys, no question. But are we going to go with a 30 or 40% decline in the market? Extremely unlikely.
Yeah, Faisal, I feel like the two stresses are the unknown with the tariffs. And then at the same time, all of the political parties pretty much saying we're going to start building a lot of housing and just
That's right.
not knowing how that will affect things.
Exactly. Exactly. And we're going to see, look, there's a lot of mandates this week again. Our new government has announced some more incentives, some more breaks, some more money into municipalities. So all of that, we need to give it a chance to absorb into the marketplace. But there's a lot of work to be done. I don't expect that we're going to start seeing, new condo projects and high rises evolving in our region for quite some time because there's a lot of pending inventory that needs to flush through the market first.
And how often should someone keep on top of checking this? I mean, it's pretty stressing to look every day. I mean, things change every day. Are you sort of suggesting every month or do you know what I mean to get a good reading on it? Because day to day, I feel like there's too many hills and valleys.
Yeah, or even quarterly. Quarterly, you kind of sort of assess it. We have a mandate in our company where every 3 months we reach out to every single homeowner that we have represented to just simply give them a market update and let them, and if they wish to know, and our email reads, if you would simply like to know what your home is worth, given the current economic situation, simply reply with a yes, and we give you the value on the spot right there. So if it just keeps you in the loop. Look, you haven't lost unless you sell, you haven't gained unless you sell. So if you just want the knowledge of knowing, okay, I bought my house in 2023 for $750,000. Every 3 months, we'll just give you an update and say, well, it's worth 825 now, or it's worth 775 now. At least you're in the know as to where you are right now.
This is the kind of information you can get by contacting Faisal Susiwala in the office you can get them online at homeshack.com or 519-624-5555. Mortgage options. Lots of options, not always the right decision or the smart decision, depending on who you are. How do you decide and what are the options?
So millions of mortgages are coming up for renewal right now, and in a lot of those cases, those renewals are based on much higher rates. So if we go back to those days where rates were 1.6, 1.8 variable, and look, over my ownership journey of residential real estate, I've always tried to stick variable as well because I will always come out ahead doing that. But for those of us who played the variable game in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen our rates spike up to 6.5%, and it's been quite a struggle to keep up with those payments. So now when your renewal is coming up, you have to look at it and say, okay, do I want to play the variable game? Do I want to go fixed? There's pros and cons. And again, I'm not a mortgage expert. I urge everyone who's listening that has a mortgage coming up to sit down with a mortgage specialist, ask the question, see what's best for them. And what's best for you is based on your job security, your intention of how long you wish to stay in that home. And, there are options. You can stretch out your amortization, or you can reduce your amortization if you want to get ahead of it. You have to look at, if I lock into a 5-year rate right now and I want to move in 2 years, am I going to be stuck with a huge penalty to get out of this mortgage? There's open mortgages versus closed mortgages. If you go with an open mortgage, your rate will be significantly higher. But if it's only for, let's say you just need an open mortgage for 3 or 4 months, it might be worth paying the higher rate and avoid paying a penalty to get out of a 2-year mortgage. So don't always rate shop. Look at the terms of the rate before making that decision. But with all things, your financial experts, your mortgage experts are the ones to talk to, because they can look at your snapshot of your mortgage and tell you what's best for you given your circumstance.
Do you find, although you acknowledged you're not an expert in that area, given your expertise, though, do you find a lot of your clients kind of want your 2 cents on what should
Yeah.
we do? Faisal, what do we do?
Yeah, absolutely. And with experience, I'm able to sort of give them, with the limited information that they present to me, I'm able to give them what I would do if I were in their shoes, and then it's really up to them to make that decision. But yeah, I'm often suggesting to people, if they're planning on staying there for 3 to 5 years, then go with a 3-year variable in anticipation that, or a 2-year variable in anticipation that over the next 2 years the rates will come down, and there's still a fair is still at a fair rate. It's going to be higher than what they may have been used to, or it might be significantly lower if they were in a prime plus situation. So again, you look at the situation and you give them advice that hopefully is the right advice for them.
Yeah, and I feel like you've got all of the knowledge. Speaking of, if I can digress for a moment, your book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker. Now, here's a book that talks about your beginnings as a teenager, walking in a door, saying, "Hi, this is what I want to do." Uh, is this also a learning opportunity in the book? Is it a story, or will people actually be able to glean some suggested ideas out of there?
So there's three aspects of the book. Now, the first part is really my journey as a 18-year-old kid in high school with no car, thinking I'm going to become a real estate agent and being turned down. And really, I wrote the book because my kids won't sit down and listen to my stories. So I figure I'll put it all in a book, and one day they'll read it and learn about their dad, because they get bored when I start talking about stuff. So that was really the inspiration behind me writing this book. Part two of the book is just a lot of lessons that I've learned in the business. And the reason I wrote that was sort of to a lot of agents, friends, investors, colleagues, young people would reach out to me and say, "Hey, can we meet with you for an hour? We just want to pick your brain." And it I started running out of hours to meet with people, and I didn't want to say no to people, so I figured I'll do a tell-all book, explain everything they want to know. It's all in there. And then the last part of the book is just my systems, what I do from an investment perspective, from a sales perspective, from a building wealth perspective, and just giving tactical, actionable takeaways there that someone can implement and adapt into their own life and say, hey, you know what? It worked for this guy. Maybe it'll work for me. I'll kind of do some of the stuff that he's doing. So that was kind of I didn't think I would ever have an opportunity to write part two. So I put everything in one book, despite the advice I was being given saying, well, you'll sell more books if you break it up. I'm like, no, I'll just put everything in one book and call it a day.
Well, this book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker, can be purchased at homeshack.com. But also, more importantly, if you're gleaning something off the show today, I hope you are, or you're intrigued, there's nothing wrong with reaching out with questions. 519-624-5555. More with our guest, Faisal Susiwala, here on Ask the Experts, 570 News Radio, in just a moment. Welcome back to 570 News Radio. You're listening to Ask the Experts. My name's Mark Payne, in for Brock Greenhalgh today, and a pleasure to have Faisal Susiwala, well-known real estate agent, well-known member of the community, ranked as the #1 individual RE/MAX agent worldwide, achieving significant lifetime sales. You probably don't even have a current tally, do you? What those sales
I
are?
try not to look.
No, but I feel like each person gets the attention they deserve. Also, the author of a book that we'd mentioned, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker, available at, you can get homeshack.com, but Amazon, there's a audiobook on Audible. I love that. If you're out for a walk, why not learn at the same time? Kindle, there's a paperback, so fantastic. A bit of your life journey and yet some of your strategies. I love that you've done that. Let's pick up next for those that might be feeling priced out of the housing market in Canada. What does that encompass?
Well, first of all, you're not alone. But the good news is that there are options if you're prepared to move. And look, if buying a home is a priority and not physically being in Ontario is an option, then let's start with the #1 spot. It's Fredericton, New Brunswick, where the home prices are around $310,000. That is very affordable to be able to go and buy a home there. Then Calgary is another spot where the median income is $87,000, and still you can get into a home at a very reasonable price. St. John's, New Brunswick, $311,000. Moncton is another spot. So Saskatoon. There's so many different areas in Canada that offer pretty much everything you can get in Ontario, but far more affordable. And again, if you're not physically required to check into an office or check into a facility or a factory each day in your town or in your city, then look at the opportunity. Lastly, even if you're not in a position to move physically, but you're just having trouble purchasing a home in Ontario, there's the option of buying in one of these affordable areas, continuing to rent here, but get yourself into ownership, because now
Ah,
inflation will help your money grow. And you look at some of these areas, they've had 60, 70% growth already over the last 5 to 6 years. And these markets haven't declined like Ontario has. Ontario was inflated. Now, those markets haven't. So there's still a significant upside to investing. I'll give you another example. When my kids decided to go to London, Ontario, for schooling, I had to make a decision. Do I buy a house there for them to live in, and then they may or may not stay there long term? But now I have a problem. Now I've got to manage that property over there, and I did not want to pay rent. That was my main thing. I wanted to own. I've never had to pay rent for my kids, so why am I going to pay rent there? So what I did was I bought a property in Cambridge. And the income that I get from that property pays the rent over there. So
Oh, okay.
similarly, yeah. So similarly, you may not be able to afford to buy a home in KW or Cambridge, but if you've got enough to invest a little bit to buy a home, so let's say you got to put 10% down on a $311,000 home in Fredericton, well, that's great. That's $31,000 you could put down. You're going to, and the rents are great. They're getting a far greater rents than we are for comparables over there. So your return on your investment is very good. And you take that rental income you're getting from Fredericton and you pay your rent in Kitchener. And now you've got an asset that's growing and your money's not sitting in the bank depreciating. And at least you've got something paying for your rent as opposed to you paying your landlord's mortgage.
I feel like for a lot of people, they're intimidated because that's something you've never done. And to your earlier point, if you're not in the same area managing that property, where do you advise? If you're going to buy something, would you pay one of these companies that manages it and rents it for you?
Yes, for as little as $90 or $100 a month. So, and you factor that into
Wow.
your rent, right?
Yeah.
You have someone who takes the call, who does basically, I call it traffic control. My sink is leaking, my toilet's not flushing. Well, you've got boots on the ground there. You're paying them a $1,200 or $1,500 a year management fee to handle that for you. And it's a tax write-off because that's part of the expenses of owning that property. So at the end of the day, you still have the benefit of appreciation. And then when you want to buy a home in this region, hopefully the value of that home has gone up significantly in the next 3 to 5 years. Instead of selling that property, you leverage it. You take the equity out of that, so you increase the mortgage on that, which you can deduct on your taxes, and you take those funds and use that down payment to buy a home in your city. Now you can put a greater down payment. And the beauty of that is that you are not taxed. It's not considered capital gain when you're leveraging a property. It's only capital gain when you sell that property. So let's say the property goes up by $200,000. You can take $150,000 out of that property, cash, use that as your down payment to buy a home in KW. Okay. And you don't pay a single penny in tax because you didn't sell that property. You leveraged it.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Okay, so let's just say someone they're intrigued right now at the idea of owning another property at a far. Where do you first reach out? Do you reach out locally to look for you? Do I reach out to your office or do I try and contact someone way down there, wherever that happens to be?
So look, if you have a trusted realtor, we're certainly happy to help you out. But if you have someone that you trust, that you know locally, we all have the ability to refer. I have a network that spreads throughout the world, let alone the country, where I can send an email to a colleague in any province, in any city in Canada, and say, these folks need assistance in your city, please help them. So we'll refer
Oh,
you to
excellent.
someone out there, and we'll qualify what you need, and we'll be sort of the liaison and the checkup to make sure that whoever we refer you to is doing what we need them to do to help you get, you know, to complete your journey here of ownership.
I love that. I love that then you feel like there's someone there you can contact versus the unknown at the other end or the other city. But I
Yeah,
certainly
it's
love that
always
as a
nice to
strategy.
have that warm introduction. Absolutely.
That's brilliant. Excellent. Now let's move to the quieter shift in the Canadian mortgage market. What's the shift?
Well, the shift it's interesting. We're seeing this rate shift happening, right? Yeah, we've seen rates, even 5-year rates drop as low as 3.64%, and then they went up by 20 basis points to 3.84%. We're seeing that happening, but what that shift is doing, it's again creating uncertainty, and people are sitting on the sidelines thinking, well, I better not do anything right now because I don't know where these rates are going.
Right.
So it's important not to get caught up in that shift and say, well, I won't do anything. Because as we talked about earlier, by in these times of uncertainty lies opportunity. And if you can feel comfortable that you're going to have a job, you're willing to tighten your belt a little bit and stop your luxury spending and buy right now, you're going to come out way further ahead over the next 3 to 5 years. So it's that uncertainty that holds people back right now. But if your plan is less certain, then you, of course, want to wait. A lot of people are refinancing right now, and the shift is also happening on an investment side. A lot of folks are not investing in new construction, in any new builds right now, simply because they're not sure what that's going to look like. Am I going to have a tenant? Am I going to be able to finance it? So it's important to get the understanding on your financial, do a financial checkup to make sure that you're in a good position to be able to make those moves. Or if you're going to buy right now or refinance right now, you're able to service that debt. So there's a lot of that, but it's all based on uncertainty. And the biggest uncertainty right now is, what is the Bank of Canada going to do on June 6th? Are we going to see a 0.25% cut? Are we going to see a 0.5% cut? Are we going to see stabilization? I think the tariffs and all of the politicalness that was going on just caused everybody to pause, including the Bank of Canada. But I think there's going to be some action coming down the line on June 6th.
I guess what I'm getting from you, opportunity exists when there's uncertainty. Even though you feel like you shouldn't be doing anything, sometimes cautiously, maybe it's not a good idea. It is a good idea, I should say. Should you have a clear idea what your goals are?
Absolutely. And that goes right back down to, okay, I don't suggest you buy things that you're trying to flip right now, because you could get caught in that crosswind of this week the market's up, next week the market's down. The stability isn't there. So we're going to, it's going to be a little turbulent over the next maybe 4 years. But if you're planning on buying and holding, there is such great opportunity right now in the market, even at the higher rates, to get in and start building up some equity right now. And you can make thoughtful decisions because you're not really out there competing with the masses. The herd is sitting on the sideline. And in my career, I have always done better in these downturns than I have in the upswings.
Optimistic and realistic. I love that about you, sir. It has been a real pleasure today to talk to Faisal Susiwala, well-known real estate agent, ranked as the #1 individual RE/MAX agent worldwide, achieving significant lifetime sales, and also the author of The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker. You'll find that on Amazon and other places. 519-624-5555, homeshack.com. Reach out, contact, and you'll get even more answers. It's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you for your time today.
Great meeting you, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And thank you to our technical producer, Devin Robertson, today. Thank you, our listeners. Don't forget to listen next week. You've been listening to Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio.